John Routh, the original Sebastian, the ibis. We have a lot of questions from the fans here for you. The first one's from T in South Miami. John, who is tougher, Sebastian or the Miami Maniac?
Sebastian, obviously. I mean, because he's, hangs around with football players and all that. The Maniac's, at least the way I always portrayed the Maniac, was kind of a lovable loser character, a little slapstick and a little comedy. But Sebastian's definitely the tougher.
We have a question from Tim Bastine. The greatest moment you've ever experienced as Sebastian?
Wow. There were so many. I mean, I was Sebastian from 1984 to 1992, so there was the 87 championship, there was the 89 championship, there was the 91 championship, there were, I think, the 3 first wide rights, and there might have been a wide left in there. I mean, there were just so many great games. I was just very fortunate to be, picked to be the ibis, and come down here from. I'm originally from South Carolina, so I started out as the Maniac for baseball, and then worked into the ibis. So there were so many great events. I mean, and going back to baseball too. I mean, we had 85 baseball championships, so it's kind of hard to pick one. I guess if I had to pick one, it probably would be the Orange Bowl game when we won the championship for the 87 championship, because that was my first national championship for football as far as Sebastian. And, as I say, I was with the baseball team when we won the 85 championship. So as far as Sebastian, probably that Orange Bowl game.
Question from Chad. John, what's the feeling like to get 80,000 people at the Orange Bowl rockin'?
Well, I came up with the cane spell out back in the 80s, and the one time that I knew it was going to work, I had done it like in front of the student section or in front of the West End zone, but never in front of the entire stadium. And it was the Notre Dame game in 1989, and it was number 1 versus number 2. The place was rocking. I mean, you could feel the electricity, and I mean, it's at times when I was in the West End zone and getting the crowd pumping. I mean, literally you could feel the ground shaking. So it was halftime, and the Miami band had finished up. Notre Dame didn't bring their band down, so there was about 4 or 5 minutes left on the clock, and I knew the teams came out with about 3 minutes. So I got out in the middle of the field, for the first time really doing it in the middle of the field, and got the crowd doing oh, and I mean I suddenly realized, wait a minute, this is everybody. This isn't just the student section. And to do it that way, and when it finally got to the point where we did the C-A-N-E-S, Canes, and I just kind of remember going, yes! Like, I knew we had something there, because the whole stadium was just rocking. And, fortunately, that's something that the Ibises have carried on, and Sebastian is now known for the cane spell-outs. Every time that they do the cane spell-out now, I kind of get a little goosebumps, and, yes! That's my baby.
Comment from Island Canes. John, are you the best ibis ever?
Oh, well, I don't know about that. I mean, each one has their own characteristics, and the ibis actually has been around since the late '50s. John Stormont was the first character on the field back in, I think, '58 was the first year. So there have been characters all along. I mean, I'll leave that to somebody else to pick who was best, but. I mean, all of the guys, the guy who danced the last couple of years has been, it does a really good job. Things are a lot different now than when I was doing the ibis. Mascotting really was kind of new. I mean, schools had mascots for years, but not really the entertaining kind of mascots. It was just always somebody who stood on the sidelines or did a pyramid with the cheerleaders. So I was fortunate enough to come along at a time where there were really no rules. So I kind of made up the rules as I went along and was able to do, a lot of what I wanted to do. We kind of had the motto of it's a lot easier to apologize than to get permission. So we do something, and then we get in trouble for it, and we say, oh, sorry, didn't mean to do it. So whereas now the mascots have a lot more rules, and they're more limited. The conference has rules about when they can be on the field, and so there's a lot more. It's more strict now as opposed to back when I did it. We could pretty much do anything, and it was kind of a crazy time.
Is there any chance you'd ever suit up again?
Well, my motto back then was sacrifice the body for the laugh. And right now I've had 5 knee surgeries on my left knee, and my back hurts and my hip hurts, and I think I did sacrifice the body a little too much. So, maybe, I don't know, maybe for a homecoming game at some point or an alumni game for baseball. But, the kids who are doing it now, they work hard, and they put in their time, and it's their time now. So I don't think anybody wants to see a geriatric mascot. You know, I don't want to have a heart attack out there. That was actually one of my biggest fears years ago because we did so many crazy things. And I was afraid that at some point I was going to catch on fire. You know, somebody would stick a cigarette up to the costume and it would flame up. And people would be going, oh, look, Sebastian, look, he's got one of those suits on underneath. He thinks he's not really on fire, you know. And here I would be, you know, in flames and be dead, but no, everybody would think it was a joke. So I don't think anybody wants to see an old mascot out there, you know, falling down.
What's the craziest thing a fan's ever said or done to you?
Oh, God, I mean, that's, I mean, we had a couple of incidences in my last year of doing the Ibis in '92 where fans came out of the stands when we were visiting places, and one was in Iowa. It was right after Hurricane Andrew, and we went to play Iowa up there, and it was right before halftime, and Miami kicked a field goal. Actually, I think we missed the field goal, and I kind of turned, you know, around like, oh, I can't believe we missed it, and something hit my hip, and suddenly there was this guy rolling on the ground. And the cheerleaders jumped on top of him. They had seen that he had run out on the field and had dove at me trying to knock me down. And so the cheerleaders grabbed him and the cops hauled the guy off. Well, we come to find out, it turned out later that Tom Arnold, the comedian, who's a big Iowa fan and season ticket holder, Tom Arnold this guy had been sitting in front of him and was kind of drunk and obnoxious. And so in a way to get the guy out of his seats, Tom Arnold bet the guy $800 that he wouldn't beat up that little bird down there. And so, you know, that was kind of one of the crazy things because we got national publicity. Here, you know, a nationally known comedian is bribing some kid to beat up the Miami mascot. And Tom Arnold actually bragged about it on a TV show. Arsenio Hall had a show at the time, and Tom Arnold bragged about it. And, you know, people were like, you know, oh, you ought to sue him because he, you know, paid this guy to beat you up. And the way I looked at it was we got a lot of great publicity out of it, and people now knew. It helped people around the country more to know that Sebastian the Ibis was the Miami mascot, that it's not that duck, it's an Ibis, and, you know, so we really kind of used it more in a positive way to get some exposure for the character.
John, was there ever a moment you feared your own safety?
Well, not that time in Iowa, but later that year in Virginia Tech, the stands are a little different, obviously, now than they are, but the fans could come right up to the fence. And I came out of the Miami locker room, and, you know, a couple of fans were yelling, hey, Sebastian, come here, we want to get a picture with you. And as I got to the fence, they literally grabbed me and started pulling me over the fence. And it was a chain link fence, so it was sticking into my stomach. And I was just afraid I was going to flip over and knock myself out, and no telling what would happen. So there weren't too many times because Sebastian, as I say, Sebastian kind of had the swagger, you know, as much as the team did. So, you know, it's kind of one of those things where I kind of felt like the players, you know, and I knew the players always had my back, you know, so I wasn't really afraid of any crowd or you know, too many situations.
Who are your favorite Canes while you were at the U?
Wow, that's a good question. In the early days, it was Kevin Fagan and Mel Bratton. Those are some of the guys that, you know, I got to see a lot on campus. Craig Erickson and Steve Walsh, you know, not that I hung around with just the quarterbacks, but I kind of got to know them a little bit through friends. Gino Toretta's still a friend of mine. Lamar Thomas, we used to, you know, have a little thing where he'd go, the bird, and I'd go, Lamar, and, you know, so we kind of had, you know, little things on the sidelines. But I don't know, you know, there were so many guys back then, and back then, you know, there was the Ratskeller where a lot of us hung out, so it was kind of a group thing that, you know, got to know a lot of the guys.
Tim Stein is wondering, would you do a Cane spell out for us?
Maybe at the end, because I don't want to get too winded right now. As I say, I'm not a young pup anymore.
Kane in Texas says, hey Johnny, thanks for everything over the years. You are the best. P.S. Mom says hi.
Tell Mom hi, Rob.
Comment from Canes fan, how do you feel about the decision to schedule a series with Notre Dame?
I think it's great because, I mean, that was one of the great series and back in the 80s and early 90s when we played. You know, to be able to get that rivalry back, because it really was something great. You know, that was the game of the year for 4 or 5 years. Notre Dame is a tough place to play. You know, one thing that, you know, because of their image as a Catholic school, people thought, oh, you just go in there and everybody's real nice, and they were tough. They were real tough. So much so that Father Leo, our team priest, one year he and I were standing next to each other on the sidelines, and one of their fans yelled and screamed, "You're not a good Catholic," and started spitting at us. So it's a tough place to play, but we have a lot of pride in our fans and know that it's tough to play here. So I think it's going to be a great rivalry, and I can't wait to see the games.
Comment from NC Canes. They ask, please tell us about the FSU incident.
Well, I always like to say the key phrase in this is I was detained. I was never arrested. It was, the 1989 game up at Tallahassee, and they have their flaming spear and, Chief Osceola, yeah. So I kind of thought, well, let's kind of do it to where, okay, you guys got your flame, but we're going to put it out. So a friend of mine was a Coral Gables police officer, still is, and he arranged for me to get the Coral Gables Fire Department helmet, the big jackets that they wear, and a fire extinguisher, one of those water squirt fire extinguishers. And I honestly was not going to put the flame out because I knew that there's no way I'm going to get out of Tallahassee alive if this flame goes out. The fans were going to storm the field. But it was just kind of go out there and squirt around a little bit, maybe squirt the fans, and just kind of have some fun. And I'm in the tunnel where the team came out. And it was a little bit different back then. They had these gates that would open and close as the team and the players came out. And students were manning the gate. So I had seen these students 4 or 5 times and knew that they were there and all. And so as the team is coming out on the field for the final thing, right before kickoff, Coach Erickson and the team are coming down the tunnel. And so I see the students, these kids open the gate. And so Coach Erickson yells, "Let's go." So as I start charging out on the field with my fire extinguisher and my hat and everything, someone grabs me, kind of turns me back around. And so as I turned around, it was this young-looking guy. So I thought it was one of the kids who ran the gate. So he starts screaming, "Give me the fire extinguisher," and with a few other colorful words. And so I yelled a couple of colorful words. And as I reached to get away from him, my hand squeezed the trigger, and I sprayed probably a gallon's worth of water on the chest of a Leon County Sheriff's deputy, not knowing it was a sheriff's deputy. And I didn't get another 2 steps before there were 5 of them on me, and they slammed me up against the fence and had one wing up this way and one wing behind my back, and one guy had the beak and was trying to pull it off. And and of course I had a chin strap, so he's choking me. And one of the guys had handcuffs out. They were going to take me to jail for resisting arrest and assault on a police officer. And it wasn't until the cheerleading coach came over, and this was, by the way, this is right in front of the Miami stand, so ice cups are coming down and people are booing and there's things being thrown all around. And they were literally about to take me to jail when our cheerleading coach walks up and said, "Excuse me, gentlemen, what are you doing to our bird?" And they kind of went, "Yeah, this does look a little stupid, doesn't it?" So they took the fire extinguisher, they dumped it out, and they held me until Osceola did the spear. And they told me, they said, "If you step 1 foot on the field at any point during this game, we're going to arrest you." Well, of course, I couldn't resist that. So every time Miami would score, I'd just kind of take a step out, wave to them, take a step back on, But to every year since then, the Florida State people have someone come up to Sebastian the Ibis before the game and explain to him that you can't go out there on the field when Osceola's out there. And they even, one year, they had a sheriff's deputy walk right next to me. And so I just kind of went back and forth, and you could see it on television that here's this bird and here's this cop going back and forth, right before the pregame ceremony. So it was one of those instances. Again, we kind of got a lot of publicity about it, but nobody was hurt, and it's a great story to tell.
What's the loudest moment at the Orange Bowl in your memory?
Wow. Again, some of those Notre Dame games, you could literally feel the ground shaking when Florida State was in town. I kind of looked at the last time we played the Gators in the Orange Bowl was pretty loud because it was a early season game, and it was hot. It was a Saturday afternoon, 12 o'clock get start, and those kind of games. You honestly could feel the ground shake, and it was just one of those. I couldn't pick one specific moment, but anytime it was a big game in the Orange Bowl, a 3rd and 3 from the 4-yard line in the west end zone, and ground was shaking. It really was an amazing place to watch a football game.
Comment from Chucky Kane. John, what was the most hostile visiting stadium?
Well, like I say, Notre Dame was pretty tough. Florida was probably the worst just because they were just so obnoxious. The first time I went there was in '84, and they were throwing cups of ice at us, and I mean it was not a fun place to be. You know, it depends obviously on how loud it is. Virginia Tech was pretty loud, and still is considered one of the loudest places. But it really everywhere we went was a hostile place. I remember the game we played LSU back in, I think it was '89 or '90, and it was number 1 versus number 4 or 5. I think they were ranked in top 10, and we get off the bus, and they have Mike the Tiger sitting there as you get off the bus, and they're poking him, so he's roaring, and I mean trying to scare you. And these little old ladies who just look so sweet, and they just we're gonna kick your beep beep beep. I mean some of those places like LSU were of course then we went out and beat them 44-3, so it made it a fun night. But there was some everywhere we went was kind of considered hostile because we were so good, and everybody wanted to beat Miami.
Chucky Kane also wants to know, did another mascot ever try and pick a fight with you?
A couple of times, but I'm proud to say they never won. The one I remember, the first year I was here was we played Pittsburgh for homecoming, so this would have been '84, and I'm standing out at midfield for the coin toss, and Kevin Fagan was one of our captains, and Kevin was this huge, monstrous lineman, and so I had my back to the open end zone, and the Pitt Panther was over in that corner, and I'm out there for his homecoming, so I'm out there in a tuxedo and just trying to get on television, and I see Kevin kind of look at out of the corner of his eyes. They're getting ready to do the coin toss, and I just felt a presence, and so I kind of steadied myself, and the Panther tried to reach over and trip me backwards. But what I did was I kind of leaned forward and I grabbed my hand in the mouth of the Panther, and I actually pulled him down. And suddenly Kevin Fagan turns and goes, "Kill him! Beat him up! Kill him! Kill him!" I was like, looking at Kevin like I wasn't sure if he was going to beat me up, So the mascot's laying down on the ground, going, "No, I give up! I give up! I give up!" So fortunately, I didn't get into too many fights because I always looked at it as my job was to entertain. I mean, I was there to support Miami and make sure we won, but I would always go to the other mascot and say, "Look, we're here to entertain the crowd. Let the players beat each other up. Let the fans in the stands beat each other up if they want to. Let's go out and have fun." So even in the Orange Bowl, I would try to get the other mascots involved, with a little skit or something. But, occasionally there'd be some kid, in the costume who wanted to try to pick a fight. And, I am proud to say I never, got beat up or never got tackled or anything like that. But, occasionally that they would try to do it. But I always try to back away and say, we're here to entertain. Let's entertain.
Comment from John. How does it feel to wear that suit for a 60-minute ball game?
Ooh.
It must be hot. Did you fear dehydration?
Well, yeah, it's always hot. I mean, that's the joke of all mascots. If they ever write a book, the title is going to be "Yes, it's hot in there." The worst game I remember doing was that Florida game. The last time we played them in '87 in the Orange Bowl. Like I said, it was a early September game, 12 o'clock start. It was 90 degrees and 80% humidity. And I would try to, hydrate as much as I could before the game, drink water, eat pizza, that kind of thing. But because it was an early game and I'd probably been out a little bit, the night before, I wasn't quite as hydrated as I thought I was. And back then I was a lot skinnier than I am now, believe it or not. And I weighed about 130 pounds, and I weighed myself before the game, and I weighed myself after the game, and I lost 17 pounds. And at the end of the third quarter, I actually started getting heat stroke. I stopped sweating. And so I went over to the team doctors, and they called some paramedics over, and they gave me an IV for most of the fourth quarter. But because it was the Gators and we were beating them pretty bad, I went back out on the field, and I had this inflatable gator that I strung up on the goalpost, and I jumped on it and had some fun with it. But that was probably the worst because I weighed myself, and I lost about 17 pounds that day on more than 10% of my body weight. So I was really lucky that I didn't get full-blown heat stroke. But it was always I'd lose 5, 6, 7 pounds a game, just because once you get in it, you're active and you start jumping around. You just you're gonna sweat. So if you want to be a mascot, you got to learn to love your sweat.
Comment from CJ Kane. Throw up the U, please, and thank you.
Got the U. It's all about the U. That's one of the things that we when I worked here in the 80s, that was kind of our slogan was, just amongst my friends and all, we'd always talk about, because you didn't get paid well, sometimes you work long hours, but hey, it's all about the you. It's all about the you, so.
Comment from Sebastian is my homeboys. Besides Sebastian, of course, who are some of your all-time favorite mascots?
Well, the Miami Maniac, baseball mascot. I actually started my career at South Carolina as Cocky. I was the original Cocky there back in 1980, and I'm probably the only mascot who has 3 Heisman Trophy winners, because George Rogers won it when I was at South Carolina, and then, of course, Vinny Testaverde and Gino Torretta here at Miami. So Cocky's, he's not, well, in case any of my family's watching, Cocky's close. It's right up in there. But, there are a lot of other, I like the professional mascots, because after I left Miami, I went on to become Billy the Marlin with the Florida Marlins. So I got to know guys like the Philly Fanatic and Slider, the Cleveland Indians mascot. He's still a good buddy of mine. And Lucille out in San Francisco. So there's still a lot of good mascots out there. College mascots, as I say, it's kind of different now because you've got characters, and the personalities change with each person that's in the costume. So, it's hard to say as far as performers, because that's what I look at is performing and how you interact with the crowd and entertain. There's still some good college mascots out there, but the pro mascots obviously are a little bit higher as far as the entertainment factor.
We have a question from Rob in Las Vegas. He says, "We want the bird, we want the bird, we want the bird." John, would you consider coaching the kids in the mascot uniform now?
Yeah, actually, I've done that a couple of times over the last few years. We had last summer we had not this past summer, but summer before last, we had a boot camp, a little 3-day boot camp with the mascots, and they're, as I say, these kids are good. It's just the rules are different now, and they're not allowed to do the crazy things that we were allowed to do years ago. But these kids work hard, and I'm proud of them. They carry on the tradition well.
Comment from Lee: did Sebastian's pipe stem from Howard Schnellenberger?
Schnellenberger.
Schnellenberger, yeah.
No, actually, the pipe, I'm not sure exactly when it came into existence, but the caricature that was used, basically the same caricature now that had the bandage on the side and a pipe coming out of the beak, that was used for years and years. And we've got some things in the Hall of Fame that show some of the images from back in the 40s and 50s that had the pipe. So it wasn't really Howard, Coach Schnellenberger, but that kind of made it a little more famous during the 80s. But now the costume or the logos don't have the pipe, and that's something that happened started in the late 80s. Some of the Cancer Society and all those people, anti-smoking groups asked the university to get rid of the pipe. And I think officially it didn't happen until '96 when the new logos and all came about. But it was something that I don't know. A lot of people wish the image still had the pipe, but it was one of those things that for kids and no smoking and all that.
Rob in Las Vegas also wants to know, how did you come up with the idea of towing a burning Sooner scooter onto the field at the OB?
Well, that was the national championship game that I was talking about earlier from the '87 championship. And it was just one of those things that, with the other mascot, how do you, when it's a wagon, I always tried to do something, a takeoff of the other team's mascot. And so actually what I did was I just went to Toys R Us and I bought this little wagon, and I brought it home and I put paper inside it, aluminum foil, and I just put some rags in there, and I got 3 coat hangers and made the top part of the wagon and cut a little pillowcase up and just made the little, wagon. And so the plan was, hopefully that Miami would be up. And so what I did was with the rags that were in the wagon, I soaked them with lighter fluid. And right near the end of the game, it was 20-14 was the score. And Oklahoma had the ball with, 35, 40 seconds left, and they fumbled. We recovered, so it was obvious the game was over. So I went up underneath the stands real quick and lit the thing and came, pulling it out. And the best part was I've seen photos that someone took from the end zone, and it kind of just slowly was flaming and then just kind of went, just burned all the way, and there was little pieces of flames all across the field. And I was told by one of the coaches that one of the referees about threw a flag, and then it was kind of like, the game's over, forget it. So I almost got a 15-yarder for unsportsmanlike conduct, but it was just one of those things that, it was just the perfect timing, the perfect, creation of this little wagon.
Comment from her Saint. What is one thing you would go back and change if you could?
I would tackle Doug Flutie before he got a chance to throw that last pass. That was one thing that, to this day, I still, when I see that play come on, I just turn the TV to another channel. Because that was such a great game that we should have won, and then, but then again, it's kind of one of those things that, it's considered one of the top 5 college plays of all time, so it's kind of neat to be able to say, okay, I was on the sidelines watching that play. But I don't know, it's a good question. What would I go back and do? Because, we were so lucky during the 80s, and it was one of those things, I'd like to go back but know that I was in such a great period of time. To know that we won 3 championships, or actually 4 in 9 years. We played, had a chance to win 3 or 4 others. When you're going through it, you just think, okay, there's that championship, and there's going to be another one next year, and there's going to be another one next year. And we were fortunate to be able to have the opportunity for so many years to play for the championship. So it would be nice to go back and realize how special that time was, and, kind of, I saved a lot of memorabilia, and I've got newspapers, and as my friends know, I've got a house full of memorabilia. So I was able to save it, but at the time I didn't realize what it meant to me, to save, and how great of a period of time that was.
A comment from Betsy. Switching to the Maniac, how is it different being the official mascot of the CWS? And did you ever try to sneak the Maniac into the black?
Well, yeah, actually, I was the official mascot for the College World Series as the Miami Maniac, or as the Maniac. They wouldn't allow me to use the Miami name from '84 to through '91, and it was kind of weird because I wasn't allowed to cheer. So I'd go out and I'd do a dance routine, or I'd do something with kids on the field, but I couldn't get do the cane spell out or anything like that. So it was a little different just because I had to be more of an entertainer. It was kind of like I traveled during the summer as the Maniac and do minor league games, and so it was more just going out entertaining the crowd and not really cheering. But I'll never forget when in the '85 College World Series, when Greg Elena hit the home run that we came back to beat Mississippi State in the bottom of the 9th inning. I was sitting on the side of the field on the tarp actually, and he hits the ball, and I had to contain myself, but at the same time it was one of the most exciting moments in Miami history. So I just kind of went out on the field and just acted like I was stunned and fell down, and it was just one of those moments that I was happy to be a part of, but at the same time, because of my contract with the NCAA, I wasn't allowed to really go crazy. So, but it was kind of like I also got in trouble with the NCAA. My contract ended with the College World Series because of the IBIS, the year that I did the smoke in the Orange Bowl against Nebraska when we weren't supposed to do the smoke that year. So that some of the people from Nebraska decided they would push to not renew my contract. So that was the last year. But the one time I did sneak the Maniac into Rosenblatt Stadium was Coach Ron Frazier's last game in '92, when I wasn't the official mascot, but we went out for the game, and it was Coach Frazier's last game on the actually what would have been the semifinal game. And so I snuck downstairs in about the 7th inning and put the costume on. And when I came back out, the Rosenblatt crowd just went crazy because I hadn't been there all year, for that series. And it was kind of neat to have the fans kind of give me a standing ovation, even though I wasn't the mascot for the series that year.
Comment from Island Canes. What is the situation surrounding your leaving the U?
Well, it was one of those things that I might have wanted to stay back then, but at the same time, my dream was to go to the Major League Baseball. I thought it was going to be as a third baseman. I didn't realize it was going to be as a big fish. But, it was a situation where the Marlins were coming into existence, and there was talk about the athletic director at the time wasn't sure if he wanted to offer me a contract, and You know, and it was one of those things that, in hindsight, it was probably the best thing to happen because I've been at Miami for 10 years, and I was able to go to Major League Baseball for 10 years. So, you know, it was the best of both worlds. I stayed in Miami, but I was still a mascot and in major leagues. So, you know, in hindsight, I don't look back and have any regrets. But, you know, there was some people and some of the fans, you know, who had a petition drive to try to keep me here. And it, you know, it's just, looking back, it was one of those things, it was probably the right time for me to leave. You know.
Comment from I Heart Canes. Where is the Hall of Fame located? In Hecht?
The University of Miami Sports Hall of Fame is right next to the Hecht Athletic Center. We have a separate standalone building. It's basically between the track and the Hecht Center. And thank you for the question, because this gives me a chance to go into our banquet. We have the Hall of Fame banquet this year is Thursday, March 24th. And our inductees this year are Dan Morgan, Reggie Wayne, and Santana Moss from football, Bobby Hill from baseball. We have Yolanda McCrae, track star, two divers, Daphne Yangi-Jans Busquet and Tice Routson, both Olympians and champions, and then our women's tennis coach from the 80s, Ian Duvenhage. So the banquet is Thursday, March 24th. Tickets can be bought for $85 for individuals, or a table of 10 for $8.50, and you can go to umsportshalloffame.com to check it out. And you know, we're looking for a good crowd, big crowd this year. And then the Hall of Fame's golf tournament is the following day on March 25th. But the Hall of Fame is located, as I say, right next to the Hecht Athletic Center. We're open 4 days a week, every day but Wednesday from 12 to 4. Or if you wanted to contact us in advance, if you've got a group of kids that want to come in, or you know, a large group, you know, we're more than happy to come in on other hours. But we have artifacts from over 85 years of history, going all the way back to 1926. We have the first football from the very first football game in 1926. We have jerseys, you know, national championship trophies. I mean, there's just a lot of memorabilia, and it's not just football or baseball; it's all sports. We have Greg Louganis. A lot of people don't realize it was University of Miami Hurricane, greatest diver of all time. So we've got some items in a display for him. You know, so it's a unique facility. Not many colleges have a Hall of Fame, and we've got a wonderful building that's, you know, houses just a ton of memorabilia. And actually, the Hall of Fame, we've just recently put in video screens, and so we're hoping at some point to be able to use the Hall of Fame for watch parties in the future, and you know, maybe even corporate receptions or things like that. So it's a great facility. Come on by the Hall of Fame.
Okay, we have our last question for you. John, would you consider coming back for a game? Could I suggest Ohio State next September? We want the bird.
That might be an interesting game, but like I say, the kids who are doing it now, you know, they do a wonderful job, and you know, they deserve to be able to get out and go do the games that you know, they work hard to practice and get ready for. So I don't know if, and like I say, my knees probably wouldn't hold up for another game.
Okay, well, thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Go Canes. It's all about you.